I just need to get motivated to go to the gym, to improve my nutrition, to start walking more, etc. Sound familiar? If you just found the right inspiration, the perfect program, or enough willpower, you'd finally stick to your fitness routine. But what if I told you that waiting for motivation is exactly what's keeping you stuck in cycles of starting and stopping, all or nothing thinking, and blaming yourself when things don't work out? Today, my guest reveals why motivation is not just unreliable, it's actually working against you. You'll discover the reason most people fail their goals, the powerful alternative to motivation that actually drives long-term success, and how to build systems that work with your life instead of against it, whether you feel motivated or not. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the show that helps you build a strong, healthy physique using evidence, engineering, and efficiency. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today we're going to challenge one of the most deeply held beliefs in the health and fitness world, that you just need to get motivated to succeed. We hear it all the time. I'm just waiting to get motivated. I need motivation. And my guest today is Jen Trepeck, an optimal health coach and host of the Salad with a Side of Fries podcast. Please go give that a follow. Jen helps people build sustainable habits without extremes, and she's going to challenge everything you think you know about what it takes to live your healthiest, happiest life. Today, you're going to learn why motivation is a myth, what really drives sustainable behavior change, and how to build momentum without relying on willpower or waiting for just the right time. If you're feeling like something's wrong with you when you're not motivated, stick around, get a fresh jolt of energy, maybe some motivation, though that's ironic, to get you on the right path for you. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. First of all, I hope I live up to everything you just shared, but I love it. I love the irony of like, You're going to leave this motivated, but we're going to tell you why that's not the thing.
Which is great, because then people are like, oh, what does this all mean? Because we're going to define what motivation is and why people fail so frequently. And look, you and I have been through it. I'm sure both of our stories are just full of times when we said this and we hear it from listeners and clients. But let's just start at the beginning and examine what happens when someone is saying as an excuse or as their reason, I just need to get motivated, right? For what it's nutrition, training, lifestyle, all the things.
Yeah. I hear it all the time. And sometimes what it sounds like is, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or sometimes it's, I'm waiting to want to do it. I'm supposed to want to do this before I, whatever it is, get off the couch to go walk or lift or whatever. And it's such BS. Like, we've been taught that that comes first. And so we're all sitting around waiting for lightning to strike. And it feels like lightning, because we have this expectation that that's what's going to get us off the couch. The truth is it's not. And that's why we feel like something's wrong with us. Because we've been told that this is what we're supposed to feel, right? That this is what we need to get going. And we don't feel that way. And we think we're broken. So fundamentally, you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. It's that we've been fed a line that motivation is what we need, and it's not. I call it a different M word.
Okay, you're going to tease us. You're going to tease us on there. You're going to deliver the goods right now? Yeah.
Should we do it now or should we wait?
No, we can do it now. Because, to guys listening, there's a lot more to come in this episode besides just this reveal.
So the other M word is actually momentum. Because in the beginning, motivation actually looks like discipline. So in the beginning, what we need is not motivation. What we need is discipline. What we need is a commitment. What we need is just to put the activity or the thing in our calendar and do it. Even if we don't feel like doing it, we do it because that's what we committed to, is just taking the action, right? And so over time, the discipline of doing something consistently allows us to develop momentum where it becomes part of what we do. And by doing it consistently, we experience the benefit. And once we experience the benefit and we can connect the benefit to the action, that's when we get the motivation, not before. So what we're actually looking for to get going is not motivation, but discipline, and that discipline turning into momentum.
Beautiful. Mic drop. This
Full
is
stop.
great. So
We could
the
end
fir-
this now, but we have
I
so much
know
more.
we could. We want to dive into each because I know there's probably questions about what we mean by commitment, by discipline. What if you
Yeah.
don't even have that first thing, like et cetera. One of the first times I heard this concept was actually probably from Mike Matthews, Legion Athletics. Poor guy, he ended his podcast because he's a millionaire now. But he talked about this a long time ago. Action leading to the result, leading to the momentum, and we talk about systems and closed feedback loops here as well. So I love what you're saying that you've got to have a catalyst, and we want to distinguish that catalyst from motivation. I think because motivation, I think people get overwhelmed with thinking like, oh my God, I have to go to the gym 3 days a week. How am I going to keep getting motivated to do that? And it's just this thought that festers. It's kind of like when you procrastinate
Right.
and it literally takes you
The
5
thing
minutes to
turns
clean
right.
out the garage, when you thought it's this huge thing. So momentum, discipline, commitment. Let's focus on that word discipline. I think it gets
Yeah.
misused. Start there. Maybe define that.
So when I use the word discipline, I mean, I'm doing the things that I told myself I'm going to do. And I say it that way because when that guilt and shame show up because we didn't do the things we said we were going to do, right? By the way, that's when guilt and shame show up. We are more likely to avoid that when it is a commitment that we make to other people. It's why having the appointment with a trainer gets us
So
there,
true.
right? Not just the money piece, but somebody else is involved in that dynamic and we don't want to let them down or whatever it is, right? Like we are more likely to keep the commitments that we make to other people. And so when it's in this space of feeling challenged by motivation, this is the discipline to keep the commitments we make to ourselves. And then what that looks like is maybe having 10 minutes in the calendar, right? It looks like making sure that we set our clothes out the night before. It looks like eating dinner with our sneakers on so that the walk after dinner is like, well, I'm already halfway there, right? It looks like a lot of little things that are seemingly so small that are actually the big things.
Yeah, I have to say, Jen, you draw me in the way you speak. I'm like, I want to hear what's next. A lot of silence is good. It's good because I'm such a rambler. All right, and I'm proud of it. I own it. But anyway, a few things stuck out of me there because the simple things. As a coach, I almost feel inadequate, right, when I'm trying to give somebody such a simple piece of advice, and I'm like, why hasn't this come across your mind up till now? The idea of putting a reminder in your phone app that says do this, or like you said, removing friction, removing resistance from going to the gym by prepping your gym bag the night before, right?
Yeah.
Just today or yesterday, someone in my Facebook group said, what do you think I should do? Should I even start lifting weights for fat loss? Okay. And immediately I like cringe. I'm like, it's a non-negotiable, but hold on, let me see what she has to say. And she said, I'm a mom. I have young toddlers. I get up at 7 and I'm go till like 4 p.m. I don't even think I can get to the gym. And one of my questions to her was, well, if this was your number one priority, how would you do it? Just to get her thinking out of the box. And then you can see the wheels turning of, okay, it's a schedule issue, but then it's like still overwhelming because she's probably looking for motivation. How do I get that started? So that's kind of what you're hitting on is like,
Exactly.
you got to take the step, but you have to find a way to make it easy for yourself to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So what it looks like is maybe 3 minutes, right? What it looks like is 10 minutes here or there. Maybe what it looks like is actually not going to the gym. What it looks like is not lifting weights, but lifting your kids. Like make it a game with them and be like, look, I got to lift you up over my head 12 times. You ready? Here we go. Right? Like bend down, squat, lift them, extend overhead. Like do that 3 times a day. They're going to have a great time and you're getting your movement in. I think part of it is like we have this idea of what it looks like in order for it to count, in air quotes, to count. Have you heard, I'm sure you have, the phrase like sitting is the new smoking.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. And they say that because it's like the thing we're doing that we don't realize is slowly killing us. And the thing that I say to everybody is because, the human body wasn't designed to sit all day. Okay, well, controversial opinion here. I also think it's not human to sit all day and go berserk for an hour. Like, actually, human movement looks like a little bit all the time. So guess what, Mom? you are a step ahead, given that you are nonstop from 7 to 4. We just have to reframe how we're looking at some of these activities, right? Maybe as you're putting away the groceries, you're doing bicep curls with, the laundry detergent, and we get it in. I have a thing that I teach people called DWDS. I don't know if you saw this nutrition nugget in my podcast. So, DWDS, drink water, do squats. So, inevitably, right, in health, we talk about hydration. By the way, hydration is about more than just water, but we want to drink water, right? Well, drinking more water means that we're going to have to go use the restroom more, right? Cool. When you go to the restroom, hold on to the sink and do 10 squats. So, drink more water, do squats. Over the course of the day, you're going to get probably a few squats in, right? Like it doesn't have to be going to the gym, committing all out, having this insane hour where you leave exhausted, unable to do other things until you sort of replenish that energy.
So that brings up another point then, Jen, which I know my listeners are thinking, like, what if my ultimate goal is to do something and there's a chasm from here to there? You're kind of addressing that a little bit already. Is motivation a matter of degrees? Is it a matter of the thing you want to do versus something someone else wants to do? I guess where I'm going with that is if the person really truly wants to, let's say, start lifting weights full on, should we shortcut that process with what you're talking about in some way? Like that's the devil's advocate in me.
You can. Or you can say, what I really want is this. Am I willing to do what it takes to get that? Am I willing to do that? Like, can I find, as you said in that, Facebook group, what if this was your number one priority? The challenge that I have with people is that they think that something has to be their number one priority in order for it to happen at all.
Yes, that is true.
And so the piece is, to me, is there a alignment between our capacity and what we say we want? Neither one is wrong. We just have to make sure that those things align. So we might want to compete in the bodybuilding competition, and to do that requires a level of commitment. It requires food choices and exercise choices and time that we may or may not be able to commit to the degree that we would need to at this moment. So maybe it's not the right time for that. Or maybe it's about going to the other people around us to say, hey, this is something that I really want and I need your help. I'm going to need you to watch the kids. I'm going to need you to help after school. Like, could you make dinner 3 nights a week so I can go do this? Right? We have to then set up the scenario around us to allow for that. But it comes down to that alignment between sort of what we say we want and what we're willing to do. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. I'm giving you the space. I'm giving you the space to dig in, because that's a great example where you're right. People might have aspirations that are pretty aggressive and a far, cry from where they are today. Maybe they're realistic, maybe they're not. That's not for us to judge. You kind of have to go through that process. But that raises the question related to habit formation and behavior. You already alluded to building momentum as the main thing we're trying to do here. So when somebody is at the beginning of their journey and they know there's these, they heard somebody on a podcast say there's these 7 pillars or whatever of you got to be training, you have to be walking, you have to be this, you have to be this. And I see it all the time in emails. They're like, I'm so stressed, I don't know where to start, so I haven't made any progress. I'm like, well, what's one thing at least that's most important to you? Do you subscribe to that, like, build it up approach, like start from one thing? It sounds like you do, but like walk us through.
1,000%.
Yeah. Go ahead. How might that look? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to take this. And so my brain is going in 12 directions at once. So yes. And again, it comes down to aligning our expectations with what we are willing and able to do. So start where you can. Expect what you are able to do rather than expecting perfection or expecting what we think is required to get the result, right? Like, even think about a baby learning to walk, right? It's not like you would say to a baby, like, sit there until you can get up and walk and ride a bike. You're going to do nothing. Don't move. Don't sit there. Mm-hmm. Right? Like when we put it in that context, it sounds hilarious. Like that's so silly. But we expect that of ourselves as adults. Like we expect to go from 0 to 1,000 by standing up. And it's like, well, hold on a minute, right? It's just, I think for a lot of us, it's been a long time since we've been a beginner at something, or since we've learned something in that way. You know what I mean? Or like, since we haven't known what to do. And it feels like, especially in my world of nutrition, like I always say, what I teach people is the nutrition education we're all supposed to know, but no one ever taught us.
Mhm.
And so I think we have this expectation that we're supposed to know how to do all this, that we should just have this ability without ever learning it. And it's part of what sets us up and has us feeling really frustrated and therefore doing nothing because we feel like we have to do everything.
That is so true. And I'm connecting with something personal in my life where, because you talk about being a beginner and we become so skilled in certain areas, and it could give you a sense of either complacency or arrogance, or like every new thing you're going to do, you need to jump in at some level of advancement that you're not ready for. I started sprinting recently and I talk about it a lot. I had some guests on the show. We talked about, the anabolic benefits of sprinting for lifters, blah, blah, blah. But it's not something I did regularly. I used to do a lot of cardio back in the day that I gave up eventually and moved more toward, higher recovery type
Yeah.
training. But in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to go out and be able to flat ground sprint all out. And I didn't do that, but people are doing that. And if you do it, you'll find that you're probably not going to be able to walk the next day. You're not going to be able to do your squats, you might hate it. Right. So there's this idea of, it's not just all or nothing. It's also the feedback loop and expanding your comfort zone and the things you talked about, connecting to the action. If you take an action that gives you this really painful outcome, that's also a recipe for giving up. That's kind of my point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like with diets, people are like, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do a restrictive diet and just cut everything out. And then it's just this painful, miserable suffering. Whether it
Right.
works or not for you, it doesn't matter. It's just like the process isn't enjoyable. So
A thousand percent.
yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so like to me, as you're saying that, like what comes up to me is something I talk about is C versus I, of consistency versus intensity,
That's a good one. Mhm.
right? So especially with diets, right? And I intentionally using the word diet, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm very particular about my word choices,
Do you mean
as you
diet
will
culture
learn.
diet? Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
diets, capital
Diets.
D. Yeah.
The first three letters say die. So there's that. No, but like when we do the things, cut out whole food groups, you know, commit to whatever it is, right? Like that requires this insane level of intensity, right? Whether it's that super intense workout, right? Like to your point, even on that workout, could you do that same workout the next day? No, because you hurt, right?
Mhm.
But our expectation is that that's what's required and that's what we're supposed to do. But it's not. So consistency and intensity are like inversely correlated.
Mhm.
So the more intense something is, the harder it is to be consistent with it. The more consistent we are with something, the less intense it's likely to be, right? The less intense something is, the more likely we are to be consistent. And so, really, what we know from every bit of research, from behavior change science in fitness and nutrition and psychology and business and everything, is that consistency is what gets us progress. But the way we're taught, the way we're sold, fitness and nutrition in particular, is that intensity is what's required. So it's 100% intensity 100% of the time is the only thing that's going to get you the results. And I argue that that is patently wrong.
I want to address that because that's really elegant. It's an elegant framework or model for this, because what comes to mind, at least two things that have come up recently. One on the diet, or I'll say on the nutrition or eating side, whatever you want to call it, because I'm not just talking about diets, is fat loss, right? We just did a rapid fat loss challenge in my community, and it's a very controlled protocol for people who are ready for it, and most people are not ready for it.
Period
For
of
2
time.
weeks. For 2 weeks, right?
Exactly.
Right. And it's always this inverse relationship of, okay, yeah, I know you have that target of weight loss, but let's reverse engineer like what makes this sustainable so you can stick with it. And what does that get you at the end of the day? And of course, the longevity of it is dependent on, like you said, how easy it is and how low the intensity is. But then the result is going to depend on the time of those two factors coming together, right? So from a fat loss perspective, it's a great example. The other one is it was probably Lyle McDonald, because he loves to just like curse at all the other people in the industry. I love him. But
So many
anyway,
do. Yeah.
he was talking about training to failure. And he's like, look, if the general premise of training to failure is that you had to do that to grow muscle, nobody would have muscle because nobody trains to failure, implying that, of course, training effectively over the long term to reduce injury, to increase recovery, is it going to be some level of submaximal? And that's really, really important. It's almost more important than the training itself, the fact that you have recoverability and longevity behind it. That's what comes to mind for me. So good
Yeah, and I
concept.
think it goes back to also, what are your goals? Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? What do you actually want to achieve? Because also in these conversations is that we get caught up in what everybody else is doing and what everybody says we're supposed to do. And then we sort of lose sight of, wait a minute, I'm following the guidelines of somebody who wants to be and do things that actually have zero relevance to me. Like,
Mhm.
I have clients who simply, not so simply, want to be able to get on the floor with their grandkids and play a game and stand up on their own, right? To be 90 years old and not need help getting off the toilet, right? Guess what? You don't have to train for a fitness competition to achieve that. But if you listen to everybody coming at us, it'll make us think we do.
Mhm.
Like, so sometimes, it's blocking out all the noise and saying, I sort of tell people, it's like, you got to have your Wonder Woman bangles on. You have to be able to hear what's coming at us or read the headline and say, based on everything I know, is that true? Is that true for me? How does that fit in with what I know I want and what I know works for me? And then, if you need to, throw up the Wonder Woman bangles to deflect it, because that consistency in what we know works for us is infinitely more powerful than the shiny object syndrome of something intense all the time.
Mm.
Or feeling like, and this goes back to the thing of like the all or nothing, on, off, good, bad piece of like, we're doing this thing that's super intense, expecting to do that 100% of the time, which is an inappropriate expectation. And then we can't maintain that intensity. We think something's wrong with us. We give up. We're like, oh, I'm broken. I don't have the motivation, taking
Yeah.
us full circle.
Yeah, definitely taking us full circle. And the question of, is it true for me, is so core to everything here, right? Personalization, but also you talked about being a beginner. You talked about the compounding of your habits over time effectively. When you put it all together, what comes to me is, okay, where you're at right now, you've got this certain scope, this certain box that you can limit for yourself. And this is in a positive sense, a box in that you don't have to worry about all these stuff outside of it for now.
Yeah.
And the power from you taking that next step and that discipline and commitment is a very large step change in your output for a pretty small, accessible, step. Even if to the person next to you who's training for the bodybuilding competition, that's like far behind in their dust of their life. Like it's nothing. It's not going to help them. But for you, it's going to make a big difference. That's what comes to mind, which
Yeah.
that's the empowering piece of it. It's like you're not just limiting yourself here or holding yourself back. You're actually doing the thing that's going to lead to consistency and massive results over time.
And the choices we're willing to make today are different than the choices we might be willing to make in a week or a month or 6 months
Mhm.
or a year. So, this is a great example. So it reminds me, before my sister's wedding in 2011, I've been doing this for a very long time. I started coaching in 2007, like before this was a thing, and 2011, before my sister's wedding, I coached my family. And in the beginning, I don't know how it came up. My sister and I grew up eating ketchup on just about everything.
Okay. I know the type.
Right? I don't know why, but and we were also like very healthy eaters. Like, we would eat steamed Brussels sprouts and dip them in ketchup, and like, we're so happy. So when we first started, I don't know, it came up that I was using a ketchup that was made with not high fructose corn syrup,
Mhm.
and different in actual like tomatoes and some other things. And my sister said to me, if you're going to tell me that I can't have my ketchup, I'm going to punch you in the face. Right? Not really, but kind of. Right? She was like, I have no interest. And I was like, cool, keep your ketchup. Right?
That's your non-negotiable.
Right, fine, whatever. Keep your ketchup. Couple months later, she goes, what's that ketchup that you use? Right? And I gave her the brand and she bought it. She was like, oh, this is good. But the choices that we're willing to make today are different than the choices that we're willing to make in a couple months. So if right now you want to keep your hinds, go for it. Like, who cares? Right? We can decide to make these things deal breakers or not and recognize, to your point on the box, right? That box is going to look different. What's outside of that box is going to look different after we've made some progress. So, like, I see it all the time with people's food choices, right? Not just with ketchup or even the things that they're willing to try, because also your taste buds adjust, right? Your strength changes, the moves that you're willing to try. We start to feel more confident. We maybe have a guide or a trainer or someone who's going to help us do these other things. And all of a sudden, stuff that seemed completely foreign to us 6 months ago is now the thing we are most excited to do.
Yeah, 100%. When you're ready, you're finally
Right.
ready for it. And
Right.
it seems almost easy and a foregone conclusion when it finally happens. I mean, that's often, usually it feels natural, I think,
Right.
when that happens, right? Like, okay,
Right.
you're not forcing it. You're not forcing it. I want to pull a thread of something you mentioned earlier related to this whole motivation or momentum chain when you mentioned a trainer and accountability to someone else, because the word accountability, we haven't really addressed that either. And there's a lot of theory in the psychology literature about external versus internal motivation. There's also, what is the theory? Is it not self motivation, self something? I forget what it is, but
Okay.
it
What, yeah.
involves like having the knowledge, having the efficacy, and having the relatedness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
that's
know
how,
what you're talking
right.
about.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about. So there's so many
Yeah.
of
I'm
these
with you.
things.
I'm with you. I
Okay.
know.
So in
We're
which
the nerds
case,
in the space.
yeah.
We got it.
We haven't even gotten
I
to that
know.
level of nerdiness yet. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it. Because you have a finance background, right? Like a kind of analytical
Kinda.
background?
Yeah.
Kinda?
Like
Okay. All
business and
right.
marketing. Yeah. But
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So what strikes me is like, even though we shouldn't wait for motivation, is seeking out some sort of accountability or push, whether it's external or internal, still a valid step as far as the commitment and discipline goes.
Yeah. To me, that's the hack of discipline,
Cool. It's
right?
the hack of discipline to make discipline even easier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? How do we create discipline? Right? Accountability is a tool for that. There's a piece of accountability, right, with that personal trainer. There's a piece of accountability that also happens with the gamification of, ticking off how many days in a row. There's accountability of meeting the friend to go for the walk. I also think, like in my space on the nutrition side, a lot of people think accountability is the food police. And I'm like, sorry, no. I am not the food police. What I am is the accountability that sometimes that voice in your mind. And more often than not, I'm not the food police. I'm the cheerleader pointing out everything you did do because your mind goes to everything you didn't do.
That's right.
Right. So, is the accountability checking off the days in your calendar? Is the accountability saying, did I do something to move my body today? And that counts whether it's the 10 squats when I went to pee or a super intense training session, right? Like all of those things get to be part of, checking off that accountability. And knowing yourself, I think, is the key to the accountability that actually works. Because if you feel like you're not going to keep that for yourself, right? Then we know we need the external. And then where is that line for you? Is it better that it's the friend you're meeting at the gym or the one that you're making social plans with? And part of those social plans is, a walk or a fitness class or something? Or is it that I actually need the accountability where if I don't report into you, I need a consequence?
Yeah.
Like there's a self awareness piece in that. And the other side that I think is really important for everyone to recognize here is that the accountability, just like the things that we're willing to do tomorrow might be different than today, the accountability that works for us today.
Can change.
Exactly.
It's good.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we're broken. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It means that we just need a bunch of different frameworks or frames or types of accountability.
Yeah. No, I love that because the method, I always talk about principles versus method, and the principle here is a solid foundation, and there are 1,000 methods. and,
Right.
and like you said, the method you enjoy or can use will change. And also, I think people's understanding of the method and how it changes. What comes to mind, for example, is people who hate quote unquote hate tracking food. And it's because they've used MyFitnessPal, and then they try this other app that's way easier and more efficient. And they're like, well, now I like tracking food. Okay, well, the problem wasn't the tracking, it was the method of tracking, little things like that.
Right.
And then you talk about gamification. So then I was like, oh, that's a good trigger for me. I love gamification and habit streaks and challenges and stuff. And that's super motivating. And I don't see anything wrong with like coming back to that on a regular basis if that's the thing that works for you. Where does
And
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, like
Yeah,
I think there's a piece of that to tie together between the consistency and the intensity, right? So when we're going to do something more intense, that gamification or whatever, that streak, because in my head, I don't know why, but in my head, when we say gamification, I'm thinking of streaks. So
Sure.
like we just want to make sure that the streak that we're looking for matches the intensity. So if it's more intense, we want to plan on a shorter streak to the win, right? And then we can do another less intense for a longer period of time, right? That those pieces are also working together and fitting in.
100%. And the streaks can be evolving into new streaks as you go, right? They become harder or higher intense streaks or whatever. Is there, I think you already answered this, you got ahead of this question already. I was going to ask if the tracking or the method of self-accountability can become obsessive. But I think you got ahead of that by saying like, you have to have the self-awareness of whether it's working for you and then evaluate it. Where I see people fall short sometimes is they give up too quickly on something and they don't give it enough time. Like, what's your advice for really feeling out a method long enough?
Yeah.
So that it works. Yeah.
I think there's a piece of this where my recommendation is actually work with someone. Because so especially in my space and especially with my clients, like I work with a lot of people who have a history of disordered behavior or eating disorders or, like a lot of, especially as we think about food tracking, like a very tumultuous relationship
and
with
the
food
scale
and food tracking and all of these things. And part of it is a perspective shift. Part of it is what you were saying about, what method are we using to track this information or to do the tracking? And one of the things that I see most often is that it wasn't tracking that made someone feel obsessive. It was actually the expectation to track and then doing it in their head, not on paper or not with a tool. When we start to feel obsessive, it's because we're trying to keep it all in our heads. And so it becomes this constant running, hamster wheel of what did I
Expectation,
eat this morning?
disappointment.
Well, but it's running through every single time. What did I eat this morning? How much did I have? What am I eating for lunch? What did I eat for lunch? When am I eating next? How much am I having? What am I allowed to have? Did I eat this already? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Should I be eating this now because I'm going to bed? Right? Like the more we're trying to keep in our head, the more overwhelming it becomes, the more obsessive we feel like we are. When it gets out of your head and onto paper, right? I see it over and over with clients. When they stop tracking in their head and they put it on a piece of paper, they go, whoa, I have a lot of mental capacity. Like, imagine all of the things that you could do in this world with all of that mental capacity freed up. Where when you are thinking about dinner, you could look at your phone or a piece of paper and go, great, this is what I'm having in 7 seconds, rather than running that whole rigmarole through every time you're going to drink water or have a tea or do I want a snack? Do I need a snack? Am I right? Like that is what's exhausting. And so I think when it comes to understanding this piece of resistance that we have to something, it's sort of worth digging into, well, what is it that's actually frustrating? What is it that we actually don't want? What are we trying to avoid? And how do we actually get to a place where we're avoiding that? Because I think sometimes we associate it with something that may be, kind of misaligned.
Yeah, you make great points. The mental clarity and the bandwidth, and especially those of us who are perfectionists, and there's like 6 types of perfectionism out there, right? Where, we talked about procrastination too. It's all linked, when you're trying to get to sleep and you can't get to sleep because those thoughts are running through your head and you just get up and write it down and boom, you get the mental capacity. That's a great example for my podcast. And you probably do the same. Like I have a notes app. Every time I have an idea, which is about 7 times a day,
1,000%,
I'll write it down, but then I'll be able to go through and churn through and like delete, consolidate, no, that's not very interesting the next day. but it helps take tons of stress off. So the fact that you're saying tracking can relieve you of stress and give you clarity and give you awareness and help you build momentum and help you close the loop. It's what I say too, Jen. I just need people to come on here and reinforce that message for the audience.
We need to hear things. What's the say? Like 7 times, 7 different ways from 7 different people.
Exactly.
I also think it's at 7 different times, because what we're willing to hear, what we actually hear, right? Like, and especially I say it to people all the time. Like, I have people who will do my course multiple times, because when everything is new, what you hear is maybe 50% of what's there. The next time, when it's not totally new, you hear something that you didn't even hear at all the first time. It's why listening to these episodes even over and over actually becomes tremendously helpful.
So
You'll hear guys. Things, right?
Do that, guys. Go back, listen to all 300 something episodes again.
Right. On different days, because by the way, the apps count the same day as the same download.
Oh, so, yeah. Help the algorithm, please. Mix it up. Just every day, pick 10 to 1. 10 to. So I was thinking of The Matrix and Memento and some of the best movies where you need to watch them at least 2 or 3 times to get the message.
Right. Totally.
That's so good. So, all right. You're definitely hitting on my like analytical brain here. It's funny. I just took a communication style assessment, those personality assessments.
Which
I'll
one?
do those. This one was through Toastmasters. So it was actually part of a project because I was developing a speech related to it. What's interesting is how that evolves over time. And the two strengths of mine today, as of right now, are analytical and supportive, which supportive is interesting. It comes from the coaching side, but I get that energy from you as well. And that you want to help people, and people can help themselves too with this if they're, so empowered to do so and want to have the discipline and get the accountability and do it.
The reason why is because that's what changed everything for me. Okay. Right? I believe the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it is understanding why, right? It's not living by the shoulds, right? Yes. Everybody stop shoulding the bed, right? Like, because I did every diet under the sun, right? I lived in that world on that roller coaster of gaining and losing. And I would feel at times like I would just breathe and gain weight. And I was like, I do not understand, right?
Yes.
And then I remember this so vividly. So I used to work in hedge funds, which is what you were talking about as, before of, a finance background. So I used to work in hedge funds. In one of our offices, there was a communal kitchen on the floor of a bunch of hedge funds. And Monday mornings, there was sort of like a thing of fruit and like a platter of mini muffins and croissants and pastry, right? Like all of the things. And I could go into the kitchen on a Monday morning and get water once and ignore the plate of pastries. The second time, it was a struggle. And the third time, I'm walking in and going, what is wrong with me that this croissant has a voice and it is screaming my name and I can't deal? Like, what is wrong with me? This is insane. It's making me feel literally insane, And I remember it. There was one day I walked in the kitchen and I was like, oh, I get why this is appealing to me right now. So what I actually need to do is go eat the breakfast that I brought and then see how I feel about the croissant. And then if I want the croissant, eat the croissant. But at least from then, I'm eating it after having something that has nutrition and stabilizes my blood sugar. Lo and behold, I go back and eat the breakfast that I brought, and the croissant no longer has a voice. And I can walk in and out of the kitchen 20 times, and it doesn't matter, right? So for me, learning this nutrition stuff, how our body processes food, what food does to our body, what, biochemically, all the things that are happening, made every food decision go from being emotional of why do I suck? Why can't I just walk in the kitchen and walk out without having an internal debate about a croissant, to an intellectual one of like, oh, I get why that's appealing. This is what I got to do. Onward. The difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it is understanding why. Because if what we said was what every diet before told me of you shouldn't eat a croissant, now the only thing I want is the stupid croissant.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of good points again, because the why, when you first started talking about why, I did go to where you went with nutrition science, but then I also thought closing the loop with your own experimentation and feedback and giving it a shot and doing the thing also helps you understand why for you, like why is this working for you? It also helps dispel tons of mythology in the industry when you realize that doing something everyone else says you shouldn't and it doesn't cause the sky to fall is very powerful, right? It's very, very powerful. And I know we fight that all the time because unfortunately there's so much misinformation that people are just afraid to try the thing because they feel like they're killing themselves. I'm going to eat seed oils or this or that or whatever. They don't even know. So mindfulness and intention and understanding why is important. How about though, the counter to that,
Yeah.
is there a time when why doesn't matter that much because it could hold you back? And what I mean by that is some people, perfectionists, again, wait to find out every bit of the why before they take action. Where does that problem come into this?
It's interesting because I don't necessarily experience that piece of the perfectionism with my clients.
Okay.
What I tend to see more is the perfectionism of now expecting themselves to only ever eat the low glycemic impact things and then feeling like, on off good, bad failure at the birthday party when they ended up eating the birthday cake. So I think if you're in a place of I'm doing nothing till I learn everything, then are you actually learning what's being presented?
Good point. Yeah.
Right? Like maybe we're just sort of blocking out because if we're fully understanding what's being shared, it likely would lead to, right, some sort of action to experience it and see if, even as an experiment of saying, is that the case for me? Right? Like, is that what I have, what I experience when I do X, Y, or Z?
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'd like to give a big shout out to my nutrition coach, Philip. With his coaching, I have lost 17 pounds. He helped me identify the reason that I wanted to lose weight, and it's very simple: longevity. I want to be healthy, active, and independent until the day I die. He introduced me to this wonderful little app called Macro Factor. I got that part of my nutrition figured out. Along with that is the movement part of nutrition. There's a plan to it, and he really helped me with that. The other thing he helped me with was knowing that I need to get a lot of steps in. So the more steps you have, the higher your expenditure is, and the easier it is to lose weight. When it's presented to you like he presents it, it makes even more sense. And the other thing that he had was a hunger guide, and that really helped me. So thank you, Philip.
For sure. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at because it's hard to explain the avatar that I'm thinking of, but it's more of the person who just will not take the action until they understand the why out of fear. But so when we think of the psychological things going on here, when someone does finally take action and they start strong, the other problem we have is people quote unquote fall off track. Now I know there's a whole aspect to that of like the fact that you have a track and the fact that we're thinking all or nothing and is there ever such a thing as failure and all that fun stuff. So, and then they blame themselves because then they lack willpower or they can't stick to it. So even if they've done the things you've done, there are people that will still struggle because of life, etc. How does someone deal with that?
So I think one of the things I say all the time is that if your plan doesn't allow for life to happen, it's not the plan for life. So are you following a plan that for you is better to be something we do for a finite period of time, not the plan to be followed ad infinitum, right? So the plan for life has to allow for life. So if your plan doesn't allow for birthdays or vacation or enjoying these things, then we got to take a step back and reassess that plan, right? If you're living in that on off, right? I'm doing this, I'm doing nothing. The issue is with the track you're on, not you.
Somebody really smart recently in the last 40 minutes talked about something called consistency versus intensity. And again, it rears its, I'll say ugly but beautiful head. That is exactly what you're saying. It's like the plan is too intense if it's not allowing for those things, unless it's for 2 weeks and life is boring during those 2 weeks, right? And then that's fine.
Right. And we recognize that that's the choice that we're making. That's the trade-off. And we're cool with that. We've made that choice intentionally. And, part of what I'm hearing in your question too, with this thing of like, falling off, a couple things come up in my mind. One is what we talked about before of not just the consistency versus intensity, but this piece of our expectations of ourselves. Mm-hmm. Is this really what works for me? It's not that I'm broken. It's that, whatever it was, right? The design is flawed, not you.
Yes.
But it also brings up for me a bit of emotional eating and situations or things that come up that derail us, that naturally, right? Like things happen. And especially in my world with food, like I don't think, contrary to many, I don't think emotional eating is this thing to be completely avoided 1,000%. Like, name me a culture in the world that doesn't convene over food, that doesn't create community around food, that doesn't grieve over food. There is something really special about some of these things that have now been demonized. And so it's just about saying, what was my plan, right? Recognize where we're at and, you know, aligning those expectations too. So it's not falling off if what we do is what we told ourselves we were going to do. So different from sort of the emotional eating thing. I had a client who was going on vacation and she was like, we're going to my brother's. I'm not in charge of the food. I'm not, we're at his house, not a hotel. There isn't a gym. The activities, I don't even know what he has planned for us, And the conversation that we had was, well, how do you want to feel on your way home? And she was like, I want to feel proud of myself. And I'm okay with a little bit of a weight gain. I want to feel like I made some healthy choices. I was like, awesome. Okay, what needs to exist for you to be on the way home feeling proud of yourself and that you made some healthy choices? Okay, well, that turned into a protein-packed breakfast. That turned into a couple walks while they were there. Not trying to transplant everything she does at home in the environment that is set up for everything she needs, transplanted to her brother's where everything was out of her control. So it's our expectations of ourselves and the commitment that we make to ourselves. If we align the fact that what we're looking to do is X and we meet that, it is infinitely more powerful than expecting ourselves to do something and then not doing that.
Yes.
That's what creates that I'm off track. I need to get back on track. Some of my least favorite words. Can we all can we stop trying to get back and just keep going?
Yeah. Just there you go.
Keep going.
Yeah. The expectations are huge. As you were saying that, I was just like, I made a little list of like 3 examples of my own clients because just to relate to this, one client, he's going to be at a camp for like 3 months with the crappiest food you can imagine, right? Like, totally. And I just mean, it's all designed for kids who have very limited palates, sugary yogurt and chicken nuggets and all that. But he's like, look, that's a reality situation. So we're going to be intentional. We're going to come up with a plan and the expectations are going to be a little different than at home, but it's 3 months. So we got to come up with something. So that's one that comes to mind. Another is a client who he wanted to enjoy that barbecue. And he's like, I planned ahead of time to gorge myself and enjoy the barbecue.
You do you, bro.
And
enjoy every second of it.
Yeah. And his normal calorie intake is like 2,500, 3,000. And he ate like 7,000 calories. And I said, how'd that feel? And what happened afterward? And he's like, yeah, I looked back and I did what I said I was going to do. And then the next day I got back to it. And that's like a good mental frame on those kinds of things. And then you and I were talking about like postmenopausal women. And that's one of the strongest demographics, I would say, where the expectations really have to be understood up front, right? Because we know with hormones and metabolism and everything that you may not be able to be on the same timeline for fat loss, for example, as someone else. And it's like, that's almost the key, the magic key to unlock success for the first time in a long time, because every other time you've wanted to get that quick result or what everyone else is doing. And for you, like you said, it may take 6 months of just very slow. I don't want to say slow and steady. I mean, that's fine, slow and steady, but very modest, reasonable consistency. And then you look back and like, cool, I did that. So yeah, thank you for, highlighting all these things because these are super important points that people can take away. Let's get into practical, Jen, then. Like if someone's thinking, I really want to go start working out, and we alluded to these things, but just walk them through. Step 1 today, they're like, it's Friday when I'm listening to this, when this episode comes out, which in their mind, they're thinking, I'm going to start Monday. That's cool. What do they need to do next?
Create the plan, right? What is your plan? Starting Monday, doing what? And create the plan designed for your busiest, most hectic, stressful day, not the ideal day that exists twice a year. Full stop. That's it, right? I'll add to that. There's some really interesting research around specifically exercise related behavior. And like in behavior change, there's sort of 2 schools of thought, right? There's the one side that says, do it every single day, no matter what. The other school of thought says, figure out the pattern that you can be consistent with and do that. Well, really interesting research when it comes to movement specifically what we see is that we actually need to do it every single day in order to then eventually be able to maintain a pattern that is not daily. So, if the objective is to implement an exercise habit, then we want to create the plan for our busiest, most hectic, most stressful day and figure out what's the thing that we can do every single day and start with that. If you want my recommendation, it's a 10-minute walk after you eat. Start with one meal a day, right? When that happens, maybe you add a second meal a day. Maybe you decide to do that with a couple of wrist weights one day. Don't go crazy, right? Maybe you got time to make it 15 minutes. Maybe one day you actually have time to do it twice a day, but the plan is the 10 minutes. So some days we can exceed it, right? But the plan, the objective is for that most hectic, most stressful, busiest day, and then build from there.
I love it. So have a template for the worst day, because it's not going to get any worse than that. And then I like how you talked about every day. It makes me think this is a lifestyle. This is you're trying to establish a new identity as an athlete, as a mobile person. Honestly, that is what many people are missing, is just any movement at all, right? You're on your desk all day. You're not walking. So even if you do want to lift weights and you want to walk and you want to sprint and all that, start with what Jen's saying. Do something every day, and then you can ramp up from there. All right. Go ahead.
I'll give you one more.
Okay.
And then there was something else you said that made me think of something, and now it went out of my head. So hopefully it'll come back. But so another one, I know, story of my life. If you can't do the 10-minute walk, or that feels like a lot, I want you to call 30, 30, 30. 3 different exercises, 30 repetitions of each. You're going to choose them based on your level of mobility. So I have some clients who do this in a chair with like 30 arm circles, 30 side bends, 30 leg lifts. I have other clients where we're doing 30 squats, 30 push-ups, 30 crunches. I created a whole bunch of different variations of this and tested them. They all took less than 2 minutes. You didn't have to change your clothes. You don't get sweaty. It doesn't matter, right? I don't know about you, but I am never more productive than in the 2 minutes before the next Zoom meeting, or the 5 minutes before I need to leave the house, right? We all have those moments of like, what can I get done in the 3 minutes, right? And we're looking around. This is what you're going to do, a 30, 30, 30. It takes less than 2 minutes. Just do it and see what happens. Like, the blood flow alone is going to make you feel instantly more energized. And then you never know. But like, if 10 minutes feels like a lot, start with a 30, 30, 30.
Love it. Exercise snacks. Those are big.
Exactly.
All right. I could go on. I know we're short on time here. There's so much I didn't get to that I would love to ask you. Maybe we can connect again in the future. But for now, is there anything we didn't cover that you're like, no, I had to cover this one thing that we didn't cover related to motivation?
Well, now I'm sitting here going, what was the thing that just popped into my head? Oh man, I'm going to think of it as soon as we press, end recording.
It's okay. It's okay. There's so much. It's funny with humans. I always think there's like, it's the tip of the iceberg, what people hear and see from us, and the icebergs in our brain that they'll just never get access to. All right. So Jen, this has been fantastic. Absolutely love the conversation. I think people will practically be able to take from this the ability to build momentum, not to get motivated, not to wait for the right time, not to be perfect or do more than the expectations allow them to do. Just start where you're at and build momentum. Take the commitment, the discipline, and turn it into momentum. I want people to be able to find you, Jen. Obviously, we've got the podcast, Salad with a Side of Fries. We'll link that in the show notes. Anywhere else?
All social media, I am at Jen Trepeck, JenNTrepeck. And website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. I will tell you, hearing from you is my absolute most favorite thing. So please send a message. Oh, I know what I wanted to say now.
Let's do it.
Because on my website, I have a download for you called It's Not What to Eat, It's How to Eat, that you can download there. But there's another one that I sometimes offer. Maybe I'll send this to you to put a link in the episode notes. That's my bullseye of change. It's a framework for behavior change.
Awesome.
And the piece of this is what you said about this identity. We're trying to develop this new identity. And that sort of reminded me of affirmations or things that we say, right? We're trying, and the piece of this that is so critical is that, if you're, like you were saying, like we want to become this athlete, right? If saying to yourself, I am an athlete, creates that other voice that's like, no, you're not, right? We need a different affirmation. The trick to making sure that this works, right? So our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between truism and falsehood. It's going to believe whatever we tell it, but it has to bypass the conscious mind. So if your conscious mind says, no, you're not, that affirmation will not program the subconscious mind. So I am becoming athletic might be more helpful in the moment till you start to feel like an athlete. And then it becomes, I'm an athlete, right? It might be, I make healthy choices. Well, that might feel like a lot, right? Maybe the affirmation is, I make healthier choices. I eat a vegetable every time I eat, right? Like find the thing that actually rings true and use that. And that can evolve also. But that's key to developing this new identity where if we're trying to tell ourselves something that we're really not believing, it's not going to happen.
You got to believe yourself and believe in yourself and give yourself the right affirmation. So great advice. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
We'll get at those. No, don't apologize. Seriously, that's good. I hope people stuck around to hear that because otherwise they missed out.
Fire at the end for everybody.
Fire. That's right. That's right. Fire emoji. So we'll throw those all in the links in the show notes. And again, Jen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on Wits and Weights.
Likewise. Thank you so much.